You will learn your place in this court, or you will be removed." The gavel cracked against wood. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting pale shadows across oak paneling and 17 portraits of white male judges stretching back 70 years. The woman at the plaintiff's table did not sit down. She stood with her hands flat on the oak surface, spine straight, eyes level with the man in black robes who had just threatened her. Her phone lay face down beside her briefcase, a small green light blinking at its edge. Recording, transmitting, to somewhere the judge could not imagine. "I said sit down." Judge Gaston Eckert leaned forward, knuckles white against his bench. 62 years old, silver hair cropped military short, 30 years of unchallenged authority carved into every line of his face. The woman still did not move. "Your Honor." Her voice came out steady, measured, each word precise. "I am reading from the court's own scheduling order, dated November 14th. Quote, 'All parties shall have equal opportunity to present evidence without interruption.' End quote." Eckert's face darkened. "I decide what's equal in my courtroom." The scheduling order disagrees. Someone in the gallery gasped. The court reporter's fingers froze above her keys. This was Beaumont County, Georgia. Population 43,000. One courthouse. One family court judge. One way things worked and had worked for 3 decades. No one spoke to Gaston Eckert like that. No one. The woman's name was Ava Sophia Ashford. She wore a charcoal blazer, black slacks, sensible flats. No jewelry except small pearl earrings. Nothing to draw attention. Nothing to remember except what she said. What Judge Eckert did not know, what no one in that courtroom knew, was that Ava Sophia Ashford held the highest legal position in the executive branch of the United States government. And she had just caught him on a live feed to the White House. If you're already hooked, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because what happens next in this courtroom is going to change everything. 4 hours earlier, the morning had started quietly. 6:15 a.m. A rental apartment on the edge of town, cheap furniture, beige walls, the smell of coffee from a single-cup machine. Ava Sophia stood before the bathroom mirror, buttoning her blazer, checking the line of her collar. She had flown in the night before. Last flight out of Reagan National, landing at 11:47 p.m. 3 hours of sleep. One purpose. Her brother was about to lose his daughter. She opened her briefcase on the bed, checking contents with the precision of someone who had done this 1,000 times. Case files in the left pocket, court scheduling order in the center sleeve, 3 statute books with colored tabs marking relevant sections. Her phone, fully charged, secure app already loaded. Everything in its place. Everything ready. The briefcase itself was black leather, unbranded, no initials. The kind of case that said nothing except competence. The kind that blended into any courtroom, any hearing room, any situation where documents mattered more than appearances. She checked her reflection one final time. Charcoal blazer, black slacks, pearl earrings from her mother, the only personal touch she allowed herself. Hair pulled back, professional, unremarkable, invisible. That was the point. She needed to be invisible until she could not be ignored. Her phone buzzed. Text message, no sender name displayed. Ready when you need me. M. She typed back, hopefully won't need you. The response came instantly. I'll be listening anyway. She pocketed the phone, picked up the briefcase, and walked out into the Georgia dawn. 7 a.m. She called her brother from the rental car, sitting in the parking lot of a gas station, watching the sun rise over pine trees. "Ava," Silas's voice was rough with exhaustion, "you really came." "I told you I would." "I know, but—" He paused. "You have so much going on, the job, everything. I didn't think you could actually—" "Silas," she cut him off gently. "Maya is 8 years old. You've raised her alone for 3 years. You think I'm going to let some small-town judge take her away because Nicole finally decided to show up?" Silence on the line. Then, quietly, "They won't be fair to you." "I know." Eckert. People talk about him, about how he rules, about who wins in his courtroom. I've done my research. Ava, the Harmons basically own this county. Celeste Harmon's father built half the courthouse. Her grandfather was a judge here. She wins 85% of her cases in front of Eckert. 85%. I know. So, what are you going to do? She watched a pickup truck pull into the gas station, a man in work boots stepping out, yawning, starting his day. Normal life, simple problems. I'm going to give Judge Eckert exactly what he wants, she said. A black woman to dismiss, to interrupt, to overrule. I'm going to let him show the world exactly who he is. And then? And then I'm going to show him who I am. 8:30 a.m. The Beaumont County Courthouse stood at the end of Main Street, red brick faded by decades of Georgia sun, white columns peeling paint, stone steps worn smooth in the center from 70 years of footsteps. Ava Sophia climbed those steps, briefcase in hand, heart steady. The security checkpoint was just inside the door. One metal detector, one X-ray machine, one deputy behind a desk. He looked up as she approached, mid-30s, thick neck, hands that moved toward his belt before she had said a single word. ID. She handed over her driver's license. Georgia license, her brother's address, nothing that would raise flags. The deputy, his nameplate read R. Sutter, studied the photo, studied her face, studied the photo again. Taking his time, making her wait. Purpose of visit. Ashford versus Ashford custody hearing. Courtroom 2B, 9 a.m. Lawyer or witness? Court-approved family representative. His eyes narrowed. Open the bag. She set the briefcase on the X-ray belt. Sutter pulled it back before it could go through, unlatched it himself, began going through each pocket with deliberate slowness. Lot of papers. Complex case. He pulled out a statute book, flipped through it like he was looking for contraband, set it aside. Did the same with the second, the third. What's all this legal stuff for? The custody hearing. You a lawyer? No. Then why you need law books? To reference relevant statutes during the hearing. He stared at her. She stared back. Neither blinked. Finally, he shoved the books back into the briefcase, pushed it across the desk toward her without looking. Courtroom 2B. Stairs on the right. Don't wander. She picked up the briefcase, walked toward the stairs, did not look back. Behind her, she heard him mutter something to another deputy. The words were not quite audible, but the tone was clear. She filed it away. Everything was evidence now. The hallway outside courtroom 2B stretched long and dim, fluorescent lights flickering at intervals, the smell of old wood and floor wax heavy in the air. A desk sat outside the courtroom door. Behind it, a young woman with brown hair typed slowly at a computer terminal. Her nameplate read, Fern Colby. Name, Ava Sophia Ashford, family representative for the plaintiff in Ashford versus Ashford. Typing, slow, deliberate. Not showing in the system. I submitted the representative registration form 2 weeks ago. Confirmation number 2024-BM-4471. System's not showing it. Ava Sophia opened her briefcase, withdrew a single sheet of paper, placed it on the desk. The form bore a received stamp and a signature in the lower corner. This is my copy. That's your signature. Fern Colby looked at the paper. Her cheeks reddened slightly. Oh, there it is. System error. Of course. The clerk printed a visitor badge, handed it over without meeting her eyes. Ava Sophia clipped it to her lapel and pushed through the courtroom doors. Courtroom 2B was smaller than she expected. 2 rows of gallery benches, dark wood worn smooth by decades of anxious families. 2 counsel tables facing a raised judge's bench, 4 steps up from the floor. No jury box. This was family court, where one man decided everything. At the right-hand table, a woman was already seated. Blonde hair, platinum, perfectly styled. cream-colored suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Smile that did not reach her eyes. Celeste Harmon. She was talking to Fern Colby, who had somehow appeared inside the courtroom before Ava Sophia had finished walking down the aisle. Their voices carried, not quite whispers, deliberately loud enough to be heard. Self-represented? No attorney? Celeste's laugh was musical and sharp. How brave. Ava Sophia set her briefcase on the left-hand table, said nothing. Her brother was already there. Silas Ashford, 41 years old, wearing his best suit, which was also his only suit, and the tie she had given him last Christmas. He looked like he had not slept in days. "That's her," he whispered. "Harmon. Her father's name is on the East Wing." "I know." "Ava." "I know, Silas." She squeezed his arm once, briefly, then turned to face the bench. In the gallery behind them, a white woman sat with a small girl. The woman wore an expensive dress, tasteful jewelry, the careful appearance of maternal concern. The girl, 8 years old, brown skin, hair braided in 2 neat plaits, clutched a picture book and stared at the floor. Maya. The child looked up, saw Ava Sophia, and her face brightened. "Aunt Ava," the whisper carried. Nicole Ashford's hand clamped down on the girl's shoulder, pulling her back into the seat. No words. No need for words. Ava Sophia nodded once at her niece, then turned back toward the front of the room. Her heart was beating faster now, not from fear of the judge or the lawyers or the system arrayed against her brother. From those eyes, that small face, everything that was at stake. 9 a.m. The rear door opened. Judge Gaston Eckert entered like a man who owned not just the room, but the air inside it. Black robes sweeping to his ankles, silver hair cropped close, jaw set in permanent judgment. "All rise." Everyone stood. Eckert sat. Everyone else sat. The rhythm of power, old as the building itself. Ashford versus Ashford, custody dispute. His eyes moved to the right-hand table. Defense is represented by Celeste Harmon, Harmon Associates, representing Nicole Ashford. The words flowed like honey, practiced and smooth. "Thank you, Counselor Harmon." His eyes shifted left, and his tone shifted with them. "And the plaintiff is self-represented?" "Ava Sophia Ashford." She stood. Court-approved family representative for Silas Ashford. "You are not an attorney." "No, Your Honor." However, under State Family Rule 6.02, family members may serve as designated representatives in custody disputes when pre-approved by the court. I submitted my application and received approval on October 15th. She said Section 6.02 the way most people said their own phone numbers. Automatically. Without thought. Eckert's eyes narrowed. "I know what rules apply in my courtroom." "Of course, Your Honor." The hearing began. Celeste Harmon presented first. 15 minutes of uninterrupted testimony about Nicole Ashford's rehabilitation, her stable income, her 4-bedroom home, her renewed commitment to motherhood. Not once did Eckert interrupt. Not once did he question the documents she submitted. Documents that had never been shared with the plaintiff's side before trial, in clear violation of discovery rules. When Ava Sophia objected, citing State Rule of Civil Procedure 26A, Eckert overruled her without looking up from his notes. When she tried to introduce a school report showing Maya's excellent adjustment under her father's care, Eckert refused to admit it as new evidence not in the case file. When Celeste Harmon introduced a psychological evaluation of Nicole dated 2 days earlier, equally new evidence, Eckert accepted it without hesitation. "Your Honor," Ava Sophia's voice remained steady. "The plaintiff's evidence was rejected as new evidence. The defense's evidence is equally new. The same standard should apply." "Different circumstances." "May the court explain the difference for the record?" Eckert looked up. For the first time, genuine anger flickered across his face. "I do not need to explain my decisions to you, Ms. Ashford." "Not to me, Your Honor. For the record, to ensure appellate review is preserved. The courtroom went still. Hazel Trask, the court reporter, stopped typing. No one talked about appeals in Gaston Eckert's courtroom. No one suggested his decisions might be reviewed by higher authority. Ms. Ashford. His voice dropped, cold and controlled. This is my court, my rules. If you continue to challenge my authority, you will be removed. Is that clear? I understand, Your Honor. She sat down, slowly, eyes never leaving his face, and in her pocket, her phone continued to transmit. This confrontation is just getting started. If you want to see how it ends, make sure you're subscribed, because the reveal coming up is unlike anything you've seen before. The morning recess came at 10:30, 15 minutes. Ava Sophia stepped into the hallway to make a call. Celeste Harmon was already there, surrounded by a small group, 2 local attorneys, a court clerk from another department, a reporter from the county newspaper. They stood near the water fountain, voices pitched just loud enough to carry. It's almost sad, really. Celeste's tone dripped with practiced sympathy. Coming in here without counsel, without experience, thinking she can just... What? Read some statutes and change 30 years of precedent? Laughter, knowing looks. Ava Sophia walked past them, phone to her ear. Yes, I'll need the transcript request submitted before 4 p.m. Official channels. She did not say who she was calling, did not need to, but something in her voice, the quiet authority, the assumption that her request would be fulfilled, made Celeste pause mid-sentence. Their eyes met briefly. Ava Sophia kept walking. In the women's restroom, she found Nicole Ashford at the mirror, applying lipstick with practiced precision. Neither spoke at first. Ava Sophia washed her hands. Nicole checked her reflection from multiple angles. You really think you can win this? Nicole's voice was light, almost amused. I think Maya deserves a fair hearing. Silas can't provide for her, not the way I can now. Silas has provided for her every single day for 3 years. Where were you? Nicole's hand froze, lipstick suspended in air. My circumstances were complicated. So complicated you couldn't send birthday cards? So complicated you couldn't call on Christmas? You don't know anything about my situation. I know Maya cried herself to sleep for 6 months after you left. I know Silas took a second job to cover childcare. I know he has been there every morning and every night for 1,000 days while you were... Where, exactly? Nicole's face hardened. This isn't about the past. Of course it is. It's always about the past. Ava Sophia dried her hands, dropped the paper towel in the trash. You didn't leave because of circumstances. You left because you wanted to, and now you want back in because it's convenient. My lawyer says, your lawyer wins 85% of her cases in front of Eckert. That's not skill, that's arrangement. Nicole's mouth opened, closed, opened again. You can't prove that. Not yet. Ava Sophia walked out without looking back. 10:45. Court resumed. A new figure sat in the back row, mid-50s, gray suit, briefcase with embossed letters reading Judicial Administration Office. Hugo Cray, District Administrator. He nodded slightly at Eckert when the judge glanced his way. Reinforcements, Ava Sophia noted. Someone called someone. Miss Ashford. Eckert's voice was clipped. Do you wish to call any witnesses? Yes, Your Honor. I call Silas Ashford to the stand. Silas walked to the witness box, raised his right hand, swore to tell the truth. Mr. Ashford. Ava Sophia stood at the plaintiff's table. Please describe a typical day caring for Maya. I wake up at 6 to make her breakfast. She likes pancakes. I learned our mother's recipe. By 7, I drive her to school. At 3:30, I pick her up. We do homework together, have dinner, read before bed. His voice was steady despite the exhaustion in his eyes. Not rehearsed, just true. And on weekends? Soccer practice Saturday mornings. She's on a team, the Beaumont Butterflies. Sunday we usually go to the park or visit Aunt Ava when she can get away from work. During the 3 years you have been Maya's sole caregiver, how many school days has she missed? 4, 2 for a cold, 2 when I had to take her to the doctor for her annual checkup. Any behavioral issues at school? None. She's on the honor roll. Her teacher says she's one of the most well-adjusted kids in the class. Thank you, Mr. Ashford. Celeste Harmon stood for cross-examination. Her smile was sympathetic, her voice gentle, the tone of someone about to deliver bad news with performative kindness. Mr. Ashford, what is your annual income? $46,000. And your apartment has how many bedrooms? 2. My client, Nicole Ashford, earns $80,000 annually and owns a 4-bedroom home. Don't you think Maya deserves better accommodations? Silas's jaw tightened. Maya deserves a parent who shows up. I've shown up every single day. Every single day. But financially, I provide everything my daughter needs: a roof, food, love, stability, a home where she knows, when she wakes up in the morning, her father will be there. 11:30. Ava Sophia rose to present documentary evidence. Your Honor, I submit for the record a psychological evaluation of Maya Ashford conducted by Dr. Helena Marsh, licensed child psychologist, dated November 1st. Objection. Celeste was on her feet. This was not provided in discovery. The evaluation was completed after the discovery deadline. Under Rule 26(e), supplemental disclosure is permitted for evidence that could not have been obtained earlier. Eckert did not look at the document. Denied. Evidence not in the original file is inadmissible. Your Honor, the defense's psychological evaluation of Nicole Ashford was dated 2 days ago and was admitted without objection. I said denied. For the record, I am noting that the court has applied different evidentiary standards to the two parties. Eckert's face flushed red. His hands gripped the edge of the bench. Ms. Ashford, you are walking a very thin line. I am documenting the proceedings, Your Honor, as is my right. Your right is what I say it is in this courtroom. He was standing now, unusual for a seated judge, a sign of lost control. You came in here with no credentials, no experience, no understanding of how things work, and you think you can lecture me about rights? I am not lecturing, Your Honor. I am citing applicable law. Applicable law. He laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. You want to know what law applies here? My law. This court has operated under my authority for 30 years. 30 years. And no one, certainly not some family representative with a briefcase full of statutes, is going to tell me how to run my courtroom. The gallery was frozen. Even Celeste Harmon looked uneasy. Deputy Sutter stepped forward from his post by the door, hand resting on his belt. Your Honor. Ava Sophia's voice did not waver. I request that your statement be entered into the official record. What? You stated that your law supersedes applicable statutory law. I want that in the transcript. Eckert's mouth worked silently. Bailiff. The word came out strangled. Remove this woman from the counsel table. Sutter moved toward her. Heavy boots on hardwood. Hand now fully on his belt, fingers near but not touching the weapon holstered there. Ma'am, stand up. Ava Sophia stood, slowly, with the controlled precision of someone who had faced far more dangerous situations than an angry deputy in a county courthouse. Your badge number is 4471. This proceeding is being officially recorded. I am complying with the court's instruction while preserving my right to note objections for the record. Sutter hesitated, looked at Eckert. The judge's face was nearly purple now. But some small voice of legal self-preservation, made him pause. She can stand, he said finally, but one more outburst and she will be held in contempt. Sutter stepped back. Ava Sophia remained standing. And in the gallery, Hugo Cray was typing furiously on his phone. The lunch recess was 1 hour. Ava Sophia found Hugo Cray in the courthouse cafeteria, eating soup alone. Mr. Cray. He looked up, face carefully neutral. Ms. Ashford, can I help you? I want to file a judicial conduct complaint. Complaints should be submitted through proper channels. Forms are available on our website. I know the process. She sat down across from him, uninvited. I also know that in the past 18 months, your office has received 17 complaints about Judge Eckert. All were closed administratively without investigation. Cray's spoon paused halfway to his mouth. Where did you get that information? FOIA request. State Judicial Oversight Office response dated October 23rd. She placed a folder on the table. They confirmed receiving 17 complaints forwarded from your office. They also confirmed that none were transmitted to the Judicial Conduct Commission, a mandatory step under Administrative Court Rule 12.4 for any complaint involving systematic bias. Cray set down his spoon. Those complaints lacked merit. All 17? Not one merited further review? The process is documented here. She tapped the folder. I have case numbers, dates, and the current status of each complaint. I also have a statistical analysis showing that parties represented by Harmon Associates win 85% of cases before Judge Eckert. The state average for any single firm is 43%. Statistics can be misleading. They can also be evidence of pattern and practice. Cray's eyes darted toward the cafeteria entrance, then back. Ms. Ashford, I don't know who you are or what you think you're doing, but there are ways things work here. Systems, processes. If you don't understand, I understand systems better than you can imagine. She stood. My formal complaint will be filed by 3 p.m. today. Copies will go to your office, the State Judicial Oversight Office, and the Judicial Conduct Commission directly. Are you threatening me? I am informing you of process. She walked away. Behind her, she heard him dialing his phone before she reached the door. 2 p.m. Court reconvened. Eckert looked calmer now. Someone had talked him down during lunch, given him a strategy. His voice was almost pleasant as he surveyed the courtroom. We will now hear testimony from Mrs. Nicole Ashford. Nicole took the stand, arranged her features into an expression of maternal warmth. Celeste guided her through a carefully rehearsed narrative. Difficult circumstances. Personal struggles now overcome. Deep regret. Renewed commitment. A mother's love that had never truly faded. I made mistakes, Nicole said, voice trembling slightly. But I've worked so hard to become the mother Maya deserves. When it was time for cross-examination, Ava Sophia stood. Mrs. Ashford, you stated that you left due to difficult circumstances. Can you be more specific? Objection. Celeste was already on her feet. Irrelevant. Eckert nodded. Sustained. Your Honor, in a custody dispute, the reasons a parent was absent for 3 years are directly relevant to evaluating future reliability. I made my ruling. Ava Sophia turned back to Nicole. Mrs. Ashford, during the 3 years you were absent, did you send any financial support for Maya's care? My situation made that difficult. Did you send any birthday cards? Christmas presents? Any communication at all? Nicole's composure flickered. I was dealing with personal issues. What kind of personal issues? Objection. Harassment. Sustained. Eckert's voice was sharp. Ms. Ashford, you will confine your questions to relevant matters. Your Honor, I am attempting to establish a pattern of abandonment that— Enough! Eckert slammed his palm on the bench. The sound echoed like a gunshot. I will not tolerate this badgering of the witness. One more question like that, and you will be held in contempt. Do you understand me? The courtroom held its breath. Ava Sophia looked at Eckert, at Nicole, at Celeste, whose smile had returned, at Hugo Cray in the back row, watching with undisguised hostility. She had one card left to play, one question that could crack this whole performance wide open. Mrs. Ashford, her voice was calm, measured, almost gentle. Are you currently undergoing any mental health treatment? Nicole froze. Objection! Celeste was practically shouting. Protected medical information. Sustained. That question is, Your Honor. Ava Sophia did not raise her voice, but something in her tone made Eckert pause. Mrs. Ashford voluntarily submitted a psychological evaluation this morning as evidence of her fitness to parent. By doing so, she waived a portion of her medical privacy as it relates to mental health in the context of this proceeding. That's not, Celeste began. Reed v. Coleman, Georgia Court of Appeals, 2019. Voluntary submission of psychological evaluation in custody proceedings constitutes limited waiver of medical privacy for directly related conditions. Silence. Celeste looked at Eckert. Eckert looked at his notes. Neither moved. The question stands, Your Honor. Ava Sophia kept her eyes on Nicole. Mrs. Ashford, are you currently receiving mental health treatment? Nicole's hands twisted in her lap. I have been seeing someone for anxiety. Where is this treatment taking place? Objection. Your Honor, this is directly relevant to... Enough. Eckert stood, robes billowing. I have heard enough. We are taking a 30-minute recess, and when we return, I will be issuing my ruling. Your Honor, the plaintiff has not finished presenting evidence. I said enough. His voice cracked on the last word. Bailiff, clear the courtroom. Everyone out. Now. The hallway buzzed with nervous energy. Silas stood against the wall, face gray with despair. He's going to rule against us. You saw his face. He's already decided. Maybe. Ava, I'm going to lose her. I'm going to lose my daughter because some judge decided before we even walked in that... Silas. She gripped his arm. I need you to trust me. Trust you? The system is rigged. Everyone in there is against us. Not everyone. She glanced toward the courtroom doors. The court reporter has been documenting everything. Every interrupted objection, every inconsistent ruling. It's all on the record. What good is a record if the judge can do whatever he wants? Records have power, Silas. Sometimes more power than judges. What does that even mean? She looked at her brother, exhausted, frightened. A good man ground down by a system designed to exclude people like him. It means I didn't come here just to lose. 3 p.m. The courtroom reconvened. Eckert sat on his bench, composed now, papers arranged before him. The rage had been replaced by cold satisfaction, the expression of a man about to deliver a verdict he had decided on before the first witness was called. I have reviewed the evidence presented by both parties. His voice was formal, distant. I have considered the testimony of witnesses and the documentation submitted. Ava Sophia's phone lay on the table beside her, face down, green light still blinking. In the matter of Ashford versus Ashford, concerning custody of the minor child, Maya Ashford, I am prepared to rule. Silas gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. Before I issue my ruling, Eckert continued, a slight smile playing at his lips. Does either party have any final statements? Celeste shook her head, serene and confident. Ava Sophia stood. Yes, Your Honor. I have a final statement. Eckert's smile flickered. Make it brief. I request that the record reflect the following. During this 2-day hearing, the court interrupted the plaintiff's representative 23 times, while interrupting defense counsel 0 times. The court rejected 11 of the plaintiff's objections, while sustaining 9 of 10 objections from the defense. The court denied 6 pieces of evidence from the plaintiff, while accepting all evidence from the defense. Ms. Ashford. I further request that the record reflect that the court has demonstrated a pattern of differential treatment that may constitute violations of judicial conduct, Canon 2, requiring impartiality, and Canon 3, requiring diligence and fairness. That is enough. Eckert was on his feet again. I warned you. I warned you. You are in contempt of this court. Bailiff. One moment, Your Honor. The words were quiet, but they cut through his tirade like a blade. Ava Sophia picked up her phone. This entire hearing has been recorded. The room went still. Recorded? Eckert's face shifted from rage to confusion. Recording without permission is illegal in my... Not illegal, Your Honor, if the recording party has federal authority. She pressed a button, set the phone on the table, turned on the speaker. A voice filled the courtroom, deep, measured, instantly recognizable to anyone who had watched a news broadcast in the past 4 years. Counselor Ashford, I am confirming that you have full authority to invoke executive communication privilege. Is there a problem with the proceedings? Eckert's mouth fell open. Celeste Harmon dropped her pen. Hugo Cray half rose from his seat, face ashen. Because the voice on the phone, the voice now echoing through courtroom 2B of the Beaumont County Courthouse, belonged to the President of the United States. If you need to know what happens next, Part 2 drops tomorrow. Subscribe now so you don't miss the moment this judge realizes exactly who he just threatened. The silence lasted 5 full seconds. Then chaos. That's... Celeste's voice cracked. That can't be... Your Honor, Ava Sophia said calmly, I believe formal introductions are in order. She reached into her briefcase and withdrew a leather folder. Inside, a letter on White House stationery bearing the presidential seal and signature. An identification card with her photograph, the words Senior Legal Counsel embossed in gold, and a clearance level that made Hugo Cray sit down hard in his seat. My name is Ava Sophia Ashford. I serve as Senior Legal Counsel in the White House Counsel's Office. I have held this position for 4 years, following 12 years at the United States Department of Justice. She placed the documents on the table facing Eckert. This hearing has been transmitted in real time to the White House Counsel's Office since 9 a.m. yesterday. Every ruling, every interruption, every violation of judicial procedure. Eckert's hands trembled against the bench. You... His voice was barely a whisper. You set me up. No, Your Honor. I observed. I documented. Every violation was your choice. I simply did not stop you from making them. The President's voice came through the phone again. Judge Eckert, I understand you have served on that bench for 30 years. I also understand that during those 30 years, 17 complaints about your conduct have been administratively buried without investigation. That pattern ends today. Mr. President, Eckert's voice cracked. I didn't know. You didn't know what? That the woman you were dismissing, interrupting, and threatening with contempt had the authority to call the Oval Office? No, you didn't know. Because you assumed. You assumed that a black woman without a law degree couldn't possibly have power in your courtroom. You assumed wrong. The phone went silent. The line stayed open. Someone on the other end still listening, still documenting. Ava Sophia turned to face the gallery. For the record, I came to this courtroom as a private citizen, a sister trying to help her brother. I did not use my position to influence the proceedings. I followed every rule, filed every required form, and conducted myself within the bounds of courtroom procedure. She looked at Eckert. Everything that happened in this courtroom happened because of choices you made, Your Honor, not because of who I am. The doors at the back of the courtroom swung open. A man in a dark suit strode down the aisle, mid-50s, silver at his temples, briefcase bearing the seal of the State Attorney General's office. I am Deputy Attorney General Marcus Webb. His voice carried the weight of official authority. I have an emergency order from the Attorney General requiring immediate suspension of these proceedings pending review of judicial conduct allegations. Eckert looked like he might be sick. You can't. This is a state court. This order was signed by the State Attorney General 45 minutes ago, after receiving documentation of potential judicial conduct code violations from the White House Counsel's Office. Webb placed a folder on the bench. The case file will be transferred to another judge for review. Judge Eckert, you are hereby placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Administrative leave? Eckert's voice rose. I have served this court for 30 years. And during those 30 years, Judge, you have apparently developed habits that require examination. Webb's tone was cold. I suggest you contact your attorney. In the chaos that followed, Hazel Trask, the court reporter who had sat silently through 2 days of biased rulings, stood up. Excuse me? Her voice was soft, but something in it made everyone stop. I have something to add to the record. Webb turned. You are? Hazel Trask, official court reporter for Courtroom 2B, 12 years. She held a thick folder in her hands. For the past 2 years, I have been compiling a statistical analysis of rulings in this courtroom. Parties represented by attorneys of color or representing themselves are interrupted 300% more often than parties represented by established local firms. Their objections are overruled 260% more often, and favorable rulings are issued for them only 23% of the time, compared to 67% for their opponents. She placed the folder on Webb's table. I was afraid to speak up. I thought I would lose my job. Her voice broke slightly. But today I watched this woman stand up to everything I've been documenting for years, and she didn't back down, so I'm not backing down either. Ava Sophia met her eyes across the courtroom. 2 women, strangers before today, connected by the simple act of refusing to be silent. Thank you, Ms. Trask, Webb said. This documentation will be included in the formal investigation. The president's voice came through the phone one final time. Counselor Ashford? Yes, Mr. President. You have done excellent work. I expect a full report by end of week. Yes, sir. And Judge Eckert? Eckert flinched at the sound of his name. I want you to understand something. When a state court judge mistreats an American citizen, any American citizen, it attracts federal attention. But when that citizen happens to be a member of my staff, it attracts my personal attention. The Department of Justice's Office of Civil Rights will be reviewing your entire case history. I suggest you prepare accordingly. The line went dead. In the aftermath, as deputies escorted a shell-shocked Eckert from the bench and lawyers gathered in shocked clusters, Silas Ashford sat at the plaintiff's table with tears streaming down his face. Maya, he whispered. Does this mean... Ava Sophia sat beside him. The case will be reassigned to a new judge, a fair hearing. All the evidence we were denied the chance to present. So we have a real chance now, Silas. A real chance. He grabbed her hand, squeezed it hard. Why didn't you tell me who you... Because it shouldn't matter. She squeezed back. It shouldn't take being connected to the president to get a fair hearing. But until the system changes, sometimes we have to use the tools we have. From across the room, Maya's voice rang out. Daddy? She had broken free from Nicole's grip and was running down the aisle, braids flying. Daddy! Silas caught her in his arms, lifted her up, held her tight. I'm here, baby. Daddy's here. Are we going home? Soon, baby. Very soon. Over Maya's shoulder, Silas looked at his sister, the woman who had flown in from Washington, hidden her power to expose injustice, and brought down a 30-year reign of bias with nothing but patience and documentation. Thank you, he mouthed silently. Ava Sophia nodded once. Then she picked up her phone, ended the transmission, and began gathering her files. The battle was won. But as she glanced at the folder of complaints Hazel Trask had compiled, 17 in 18 months, all buried, all ignored, she knew the war was far from over. Somewhere in this county, in this system, there were more Judge Eckerts, more buried complaints, more families denied justice because of how they looked or who represented them. She had exposed one symptom. The disease remained. That night, alone in her rental apartment, Ava Sophia received an encrypted email. No sender name, just a string of numbers. The message contained a single line. Eckert isn't the only one. Check Beaumont Records, 2019. Attached. A PDF document, 37 pages, most of it blacked out, but a few lines were visible. Transfer from account to personal account of Judge, dated March 15, 2019. Amount, $47,000. Notation, consulting. Ava Sophia stared at the screen. She had thought this was about one corrupt judge, one rigged courtroom, one case. But what if Eckert was just the beginning? What if the rot went deeper? She saved the file, closed her laptop, and sat in the dark thinking. Tomorrow, she would fly back to Washington, file her report, brief the president. But this document, this redacted, mysterious document, would stay with her. A thread left dangling, a question unanswered, and questions, once asked, demanded answers. Outside the window, Beaumont County slept peacefully. The courthouse sat dark at the end of Main Street. A new judge would take Eckert's place soon. The system would continue. But somewhere in those old files, in those buried complaints, in those redacted transfers, the truth was waiting. And Ava Sophia Ashford had never been very good at leaving questions unanswered. "You should have stayed in Washington." The voice came from behind her, low and measured, carrying the weight of a threat wrapped in courtesy. Ava Sophia did not turn around. She stood at the counter of Beaumont's only coffee shop, waiting for her order, watching the reflection in the glass display case. A man, mid-50s, silver hair swept back from a tanned face. Suit that cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. He stood close enough that she could smell his cologne. Expensive, subtle, the kind worn by men who never had to worry about making impressions because their money made impressions for them. "I don't believe we've met," she said. "We haven't." He stepped closer. "But I know who you are, Ms. Ashford. Senior Legal Counsel, White House. Very impressive credentials." "Thank you. I also know you received an interesting email last night. Encrypted, anonymous, containing documents that don't belong to you." Now she turned. The man smiled. It did not reach his eyes. "My name is Preston Harmon. Celeste is my daughter. And you, Ms. Ashford, have made a very serious mistake." 3 days had passed since the courtroom confrontation. 3 days since Judge Eckert had been escorted from the bench, face gray with shock, career in ruins. 3 days since the president's voice had echoed through courtroom 2B and changed everything. Ava Sophia had intended to fly back to Washington the next morning, file her report, brief the counsel's office, return to the work that waited on her desk, treaties to review, executive orders to draft, the endless machinery of federal governance. But the email had changed her plans. That single document, mostly redacted, hinting at financial transfers and buried connections, had kept her awake until 3 a.m. She had run the visible account numbers through every database she could access. She had cross-referenced the date, March 15, 2019, with Beaumont County court records. What she found had made her book another 3 nights at the rental apartment. And now Preston Harmon, patriarch of the family whose name adorned half the buildings in this county, was standing in a coffee shop, threatening her before breakfast. "I'm not sure what you're referring to," she said calmly, "but I'm always happy to meet local civic leaders." "Don't play games, Ms. Ashford." His voice hardened. "You're a long way from the White House, a long way from anyone who can protect you, and the people you're investigating have resources you cannot imagine. I'm not investigating anyone. I came here to help my brother with a custody case." A custody case that destroyed a judge's career in 48 hours. Judge Eckert destroyed his own career. I simply documented it. Harmon's smile thinned. "You documented what you were meant to see. The surface, the performance. But there are layers to this county that you don't understand. Relationships that go back generations. Arrangements that keep things stable." Arrangements. She let the word hang. Interesting choice of vocabulary. "Leave, Ms. Ashford. Go back to Washington. File your report about Eckert. Celebrate your victory. And forget about anything else you might have stumbled across. Or," he leaned closer. He leaned, close enough that his breath touched her ear. "Or you'll discover that even White House credentials can't protect you from everything." He straightened, adjusted his cuffs, and walked out of the coffee shop without looking back. Ava Sophia watched him go. Her heart was beating faster than she would have liked, but her hands remained steady as she picked up her coffee. Threat delivered, message received. And now she knew she was on to something real. If you thought Part 1 was intense, buckle up. What Ava Sophia uncovers next will shake this entire county to its foundations. Make sure you're subscribed. You don't want to miss what happens when she starts pulling at those threads. She spent the morning at the county records office, a cramped building 3 blocks from the courthouse. The clerk, a nervous young man named Timothy who kept glancing at his phone, had been reluctant to help until she produced her federal identification. "I'm researching a pattern of judicial conduct," she explained. "Specifically, cases adjudicated by judges in this district between 2018 and 2020. "That's a lot of cases." "I have time." Timothy led her to a basement archive room, metal shelves stuffed with cardboard boxes, fluorescent lights flickering overhead, the smell of old paper and dust thick in the air. "Physical records before 2021 aren't digitized," he said apologetically. "Budget cuts." "I understand." He left her alone. She began pulling boxes. March 2019. The date from the redacted document. She started there, working backward and forward, building a picture from fragments. By noon, she had identified 17 cases where Harmon and Associates had represented parties against pro se litigants or attorneys of color. In 16 of those cases, the ruling favored Harmon's client. In 14, there were procedural irregularities, evidence excluded without clear justification, objections sustained without legal basis, timelines compressed in ways that disadvantaged the opposing party. Eckert had presided over 8 of those cases, but the other 6 had been heard by a different judge, Judge Raymond Morrison, the same judge who had been assigned to Silas's case after Eckert's removal. Ava Sophia stared at the name. Her brother's custody hearing was scheduled to resume in 2 weeks before Judge Morrison. A fresh start they had been promised, a fair hearing. But if Morrison was part of the same pattern, she pulled more boxes. 2 p.m. Her phone buzzed. Text from Silas. "Nicole's lawyer wants to meet. Settlement discussion. Should I go?" She typed back, "Don't agree to anything yet. I need to check something." His response came immediately. "Ava, what's going on? I thought we won. We won a battle, working on the war." She pocketed the phone and continued reading. By 4 p.m., she had built a timeline. 2017. Harmon and Associates begins dramatically increasing its family court caseload. Win rate, 61%. 2018. Win rate climbs to 74%. Preston Harmon makes a $200,000 donation to the Beaumont County Judicial Support Fund. 2019. Win rate reaches 83%. Judge Eckert's wife joins the board of a nonprofit chaired by Preston Harmon. Judge Morrison purchases a vacation home in Hilton Head. Listed price, $450,000, on a salary of $147,000 annually. 2020. Win rate stabilizes at 85%. 3 attorneys file complaints about biased rulings. All 3 complaints are administratively closed by Hugo Cray's office. 2021. One of the complaining attorneys, a black woman named Denise Carter, has her law license suspended after allegations of misconduct. The allegations originate from an anonymous tip. She loses her practice, her home, her marriage. Last known address, a women's shelter in Atlanta. Ava Sophia sat back, files spread around her on the dusty floor. This wasn't just bias. This was a system, coordinated, protected, and ruthless in eliminating threats. And she had just become the newest threat. She called a number from memory. Encrypted line, direct to the White House counsel's office. Ashford. The voice on the other end belonged to Marcus Webb, deputy counsel, her direct supervisor. "I thought you were flying back today." "Change of plans. I need a deeper investigation authorized." "Deeper than taking down a 30-year judge in 48 hours?" "Much deeper." She outlined what she had found: the pattern of rulings, the financial anomalies, the destroyed careers of those who had complained. Webb listened without interrupting. "This is state-level corruption," he said finally. "Not normally our jurisdiction. The complaints that were buried could constitute obstruction of justice. The coordinated targeting of attorneys of color could trigger civil rights violations under federal law. And if state judges are being paid for favorable rulings, that's potentially racketeering. Silence on the line. You want me to authorize a federal investigation into an entire county's judicial system. I want you to authorize me to keep digging. If what I find warrants federal intervention, I'll build the case. More silence. The president was impressed with how you handled Eckert, Webb said finally. He mentioned you by name in the morning briefing, called it exactly the kind of accountability we need to see. I'm glad he approved. He also said, and I quote, "If Ashford finds more rot, let her root it out." Ava Sophia allowed herself a small smile. Then I have authorization? You have 72 hours to determine if there's enough for a formal investigation. After that, either you come home with a case file or you come home. Understood. And Ashford, be careful. Small-town power structures don't go down easy. They fight dirty. I know. They already started. That evening, she met Silas at a diner on the edge of town, far from the courthouse, far from anywhere the Harmons might have eyes. Settlement offer. He slid a document across the table. Joint custody. Nicole gets Maya every other week. I keep primary residence, but she gets equal decision-making authority. Ava Sophia read through the terms, frowning. This is generous, too generous. That's what I thought. After everything that happened, why would they suddenly want to compromise? Because they're scared. She set down the document. Not of losing the custody case, of what else I might find. What do you mean? She told him about the records, the pattern, the financial irregularities, Morrison's vacation home, Denise Carter's destroyed career. Silas's face went pale. Morrison is supposed to hear our case. I know. So even with Eckert gone, the system that protected Eckert is still in place. Different judge, same machine. Then what do we do? Ava Sophia looked at her brother, exhausted, desperate, a good man caught in a web he had never asked to be part of. We expose the machine. The next morning, she drove to Atlanta. Denise Carter's last known address was a women's shelter on the south side, a converted church with barred windows and a security guard at the door. Ava Sophia showed her federal ID, explained she was investigating judicial corruption in Beaumont County, and asked if Denise was still a resident. She left 6 months ago, the shelter director told her. Found work, got an apartment, trying to rebuild. Do you have her current address? The director hesitated. She's been through a lot. Doesn't trust easily. I understand. But the people who destroyed her career are still operating. I'm trying to stop them. The director studied her face for a long moment. Then she wrote an address on a slip of paper. She works at a legal aid clinic now, paralegal. It's all she can do without her license. Ava Sophia took the paper. Thank you. Ms. Ashford? The director's voice stopped her at the door. When Denise first came here, she couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. She'd been a successful attorney, and they took everything from her based on lies. If you can prove what they did, I will. The legal aid clinic occupied a storefront in a strip mall, fluorescent lights, second-hand furniture, walls lined with legal posters in Spanish and English. A receptionist directed Ava Sophia to a back office where a woman sat surrounded by case files. Denise Carter was 43 but looked older. Her hair was streaked with gray that hadn't been there in her bar association photo from 2019. Her eyes carried the weight of someone who had seen the system at its worst. Ms. Carter, my name is Ava Sophia Ashford. I'm with the White House counsel's office. Denise looked up. Her expression didn't change. I know who you are. Saw the news about Eckert. A pause. Took down a judge in 2 days. Impressive. I had advantages most people don't. Yes, you did. The words hung between them, an acknowledgement of the inequality built into the system they were both trying to fight. I'm investigating the pattern of corruption in Beaumont County, Ava Sophia continued. Your name came up in the records. You filed a complaint against Judge Eckert in 2020. I filed 3 complaints, against Eckert, against Morrison, against the entire system. Denise laughed bitterly. And 6 months later, I was disbarred based on anonymous allegations that I had mishandled client funds. Allegations that were never substantiated, never investigated properly, but somehow resulted in emergency suspension of my license. Who made the allegations? Anonymous tip to the state bar. No name, no evidence, just enough detail to sound credible. By the time I could respond, my reputation was destroyed. Clients left. Partners distanced themselves. My husband decided he didn't sign up to be married to a disgraced attorney. She picked up a pen, set it down, picked it up again. Nervous energy that had nowhere to go. I lost everything, Ms. Ashford. My career, my marriage, my home, my faith that the system could ever work for people like us. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be effective. Denise met her eyes directly. You want to take them down? Then you need to understand what you're fighting. This isn't about one judge. It's not even about the Harmons, though they're the face of it. It's about a network. Judges, lawyers, administrators, police, all connected, all protecting each other, all profiting from a system designed to extract money and power from people who can't fight back. I've seen pieces of it. The financial records, you've seen what they let you see. Denise opened a drawer, pulled out a thick folder. I've been collecting evidence for 3 years, waiting for someone with enough power to actually use it. She slid the folder across the desk. Everything I couldn't prove before. Bank records I obtained through unofficial channels. Testimony from clients who were too scared to go public. Communications between Hugo Cray's office and the Harmon firm that show coordinated suppression of complaints. Ava Sophia opened the folder. Inside, hundreds of pages of documents, photographs, transcripts. This is enough to bring them all down, if the right person uses it the right way. Their eyes met. Ms. Carter, I need to ask, why didn't you take this to federal authorities before? I tried. Denise's voice hardened. Twice. First time, the FBI agent I contacted turned out to be golf buddies with Preston Harmon. My report went nowhere. Second time, I reached out to the DOJ Civil Rights Division. Got a polite letter saying they were reviewing the matter. That was 2 years ago. Still waiting for that review. I'm not those people. No. You're the woman who called the president from a courtroom and made a judge cry on camera. That's why I'm giving you this. She tapped the folder. But I need something in return. What? If you bring them down, when you bring them down, I want my name cleared. I want my license reinstated. I want the world to know that Denise Carter wasn't a criminal. She was a target. Ava Sophia held out her hand. You have my word. They shook. Be careful, Denise said as Ava Sophia gathered the folder. Preston Harmon has connections everywhere. Police, judges, politicians. And he doesn't just destroy careers. Some people who crossed him disappeared. Disappeared? Ask about Marcus Trent, local journalist. Wrote a series about judicial corruption in 2018. Car accident 6 months later. Single vehicle, rural road, no witnesses. You think it wasn't an accident? I think Marcus Trent was a careful driver who never drank and somehow managed to drive off a cliff at 2 a.m. after publishing articles that embarrassed the Harmon family. Ava Sophia absorbed this. Thank you, Ms. Carter, for everything. Thank me when it's over. And Ms. Ashford? Yes? Don't drive on any rural roads alone. The deeper she digs, the more dangerous this gets. If you want to see Ava Sophia take down this entire corrupt network, hit that subscribe button right now, because the confrontation coming up is going to be explosive. She drove back to Beaumont as the sun set, Denise Carter's folder on the passenger seat beside her. The evidence was substantial. Bank transfers, emails, witness statements. Enough to build a case, maybe. Enough to justify federal intervention. But she needed one more piece. The redacted document from the anonymous email had mentioned a specific date, March 15th, 2019. A transfer of $47,000. She had found records of Morrison's vacation home purchase around that time, But the direct connection was still missing. She needed the source of that document. She needed to know who had sent it, and what else they knew. Her phone rang. Unknown number. "Ms. Ashford?" The voice was electronically distorted, unrecognizable. "You received my email." "Who is this?" "Someone who wants the same thing you want. Justice." "Then why hide?" "Because I'm still inside the system, still watching, still gathering evidence. If they knew who I was, I'd end up like Denise Carter, or Marcus Trent." Ava Sophia pulled over to the side of the road, heart racing. "What do you want?" "I want you to finish what I started. The document I sent you. It's real. Part of a larger file showing systematic payments from Harmon-controlled accounts to judges, administrators, and law enforcement officials over a 7-year period. Total amount, over $2 million. "Where's the rest of the file?" "Safe, for now, but I can't access it without triggering alerts. The system is locked down after what happened to Eckert. They're scared, which makes them dangerous." "How do I get the file?" "There's a records room in the basement of the county administrative building. Physical backups of financial transactions before the system went digital. Filing cabinet 7C, folders marked miscellaneous donations. The transfers are hidden in plain sight, disguised as charitable contributions." "Why haven't you retrieved them yourself?" "Because I don't have federal authority. You do. You can walk in with a warrant and take whatever you need. I can't." Ava Sophia considered this. A warrant would require probable cause, which she now had thanks to Denise Carter's folder. But obtaining a warrant through local channels would alert the very people she was investigating. "I'll need to go through federal court for the warrant. That takes time." "You have until Friday. There's a meeting scheduled at Harmon's estate. Judges, administrators, key players. They're going to discuss damage control after the Eckert situation. If you can get the financial records before then, you'll have leverage. After, they'll destroy everything." "How do you know about this meeting?" "Because I'm invited." The line went dead. The next 48 hours blurred together. Ava Sophia called Marcus Webb, outlined what she had found, and requested emergency authorization for a federal warrant based on suspected civil rights violations and financial fraud. "This is big," Webb said slowly. "Bigger than one judge. You're talking about a RICO case." "I'm talking about a county where justice has been for sale for at least 7 years, where careers were destroyed, lives were ruined, and at least one person may have been killed to protect the system." "You have evidence of murder?" "I have evidence of a journalist who died in a suspicious accident after investigating the same people I'm investigating." "That's not proof." "No, but combined with everything else, it's enough to justify a thorough federal investigation. The kind with subpoena power, the kind that can break through the walls they've built." Webb was silent for a long moment. "I'm going to call the AG. Stay by your phone." 3 hours later, she had authorization, emergency warrant, issued by a federal judge in Atlanta based on probable cause for civil rights violations and financial fraud. The warrant authorized seizure of physical and digital records from the Beaumont County Administrative Building related to financial transactions between 2017 and present. She drove to the county building at 7 a.m. Friday morning, accompanied by 2 FBI agents from the Atlanta field office. Agent Reyes, a compact woman with sharp eyes, and Agent Thornton, a tall man who moved like a former military. The receptionist looked up as they entered. "Can I help?" Ava Sophia placed the warrant on the desk. "Federal warrant. We need access to the records room in the basement. Filing cabinets 7 through 12. The receptionist's face went pale. I need to call my supervisor." "Of course. We'll wait." 15 minutes later, Hugo Cray appeared, flustered and sweating despite the early morning chill. "Ms. Ashford, this is unexpected." "Mr. Cray." She nodded politely. "We have a federal warrant authorizing seizure of financial records. Your cooperation would be appreciated." "These records are county property. I'm not sure you have jurisdiction." The warrant was issued by a federal judge based on probable cause for civil rights violations under 42 U.S.C., Section 1983, and potential financial fraud involving interstate transactions. Agent Reyes stepped forward. Your jurisdiction concerns are noted. They can be raised with the court. In the meantime, we're going to execute this warrant. Cray's mouth opened and closed. I need to make some calls. Make them? Ava Sophia moved past him toward the stairs. We'll be in the basement. Filing cabinet 7C was exactly where the anonymous source had said it would be. The folders marked miscellaneous donations contained records going back to 2016. Checks, wire transfers, cash deposits, all meticulously documented, and all flowing from accounts connected to Preston Harmon and his network of businesses to recipients including Judge Gaston Eckert, $127,000 over 6 years. Judge Raymond Morrison, $183,000 over 5 years. Hugo Cray, $94,000 over 4 years. Deputy Roland Sutter, $45,000 over 3 years. Clerk Fern Colby, $32,000 over 2 years. The amounts were disguised as consulting fees, charitable donations, speaking honoraria. Plausible if you didn't look too closely, damning if you did. This is systematic, Agent Thornton muttered, photographing each document. They bought the entire judicial system. They bought silence, Ava Sophia corrected. And when silence wasn't enough, they bought destruction, careers, reputations, maybe lives. She pulled out another folder, this one marked confidential. Inside, correspondence between Hugo Cray and the State Bar Association. Specifically, the anonymous tip that had triggered Denise Carter's disbarment. The original email had been printed and filed, and the header showed it had been sent from a computer registered to Harmon Associates. We've got them, she said quietly. By noon, the evidence had been cataloged, photographed, and loaded into federal custody. Ava Sophia stood in the parking lot, watching the FBI vehicle drive away, when her phone rang. Private number. You made a mistake, Ms. Ashford. Preston Harmon's voice was cold, controlled, but she could hear the rage beneath. I don't think so, Mr. Harmon. I think I just exposed a 7-year conspiracy to corrupt the Beaumont County justice system. You exposed nothing. Those records are out of context. Charitable donations, consulting fees, all perfectly legal. Then you have nothing to worry about. I'm not worried about myself, I'm worried about you. Is that a threat? It's a prediction. You came here to help your brother. Instead, you've declared war on people who have been running this county since before you were born. People with resources, connections, influence, people who don't lose. Everyone loses eventually, Mr. Harmon, even people who think they're untouchable. Your brother's custody hearing is scheduled for next week. Judge Morrison is still on the bench. The evidence you collected won't be processed for months, maybe years. In the meantime, Silas Ashford will face a judge who knows exactly who you are and what you've done. Ava Sophia felt a chill despite the warm Georgia sun. Are you saying Judge Morrison will retaliate against my brother because of my investigation? I'm saying that justice in Beaumont County has always depended on relationships, and you've just burned every relationship your family had here. Then I'll build new ones. With whom? The FBI agents who'll leave as soon as the warrant is executed? The federal prosecutors who have 1,000 other cases to prioritize? The president who'll forget your name as soon as the next crisis hits? He laughed, a soft, ugly sound. You're alone, Ms. Ashford. More alone than you've ever been. And alone people in Beaumont County tend to have accidents. The line went dead. She found Silas at his apartment, sitting at the kitchen table with Maya, helping with homework. The scene was so normal, so peaceful, that for a moment she couldn't bring herself to disturb it. Aunt Ava. Maya looked up, face brightening. Are you staying for dinner? Dad's making spaghetti. I'd love that, sweetheart. Silas caught her eye over Maya's head. He could read the tension in her face. Maya, honey, can you finish problem 7 on your own? I need to talk to Aunt Ava for a minute. Okay, Dad. They stepped onto the small balcony overlooking the parking lot. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "What happened?" Silas asked. She told him everything. The records, the warrant, the evidence of systematic corruption, Preston Harmon's threat. His face went gray. "So even though we took down Eckert, even though we exposed the whole system, Morrison could still rule against me?" "The evidence won't be processed before your hearing, and Morrison has every reason to be hostile now." "Then what was the point?" His voice cracked. "What was the point of any of this?" "The point is that the truth is out there now. The FBI has the records. The DOJ will investigate. Eventually isn't good enough." He slammed his palm against the railing. "Eventually doesn't help Maya. Eventually doesn't stop them from taking my daughter next week." Ava Sophia had no answer. They stood in silence as the sun disappeared below the horizon. "There has to be something," Silas said finally. "Some way to protect Maya, some legal strategy, some—" "There might be." He looked at her sharply. "What?" "Morrison hasn't been formally charged with anything yet, but if evidence of his corruption became public before the hearing, he'd have to recuse himself. The case would be transferred to another jurisdiction, probably Atlanta. A judge with no connection to Harmon or his network." "How do we make the evidence public?" "We don't." She met his eyes. "But someone else might." That night, she made another call. Same encrypted line, same distorted voice. "I need your help." "I know. I heard about Harmon's threat." "How?" "I'm inside the system, remember? I hear everything." Ava Sophia took a breath. "The hearing is next week. Morrison is still on the bench. The FBI evidence won't be processed in time." "I know." "Can you leak Morrison's financial records to the press? Force a recusal?" Silence on the line. "That would expose me." "I can protect you. Federal witness protection, immunity deal." "You can't protect me from Preston Harmon. No one can, not even the president." "Then what do you suggest?" Another pause. When the voice came again, it was thoughtful. "There's another way. Morrison has a meeting at Harmon's estate tomorrow night. All the key players will be there. If someone were to record that meeting, capture them discussing their plans in their own words, that recording would be admissible evidence, and it would force immediate action." "How would I get access to that meeting?" "You wouldn't, but I would." "You'd record them?" "I've been recording them for 3 years, waiting for the right moment." A pause. "I think the moment has arrived." "Why now? After everything you've risked, after years of waiting, why help me now?" The distorted voice wavered slightly. "Because I watched what you did in that courtroom. You didn't use your power to intimidate or destroy. You used it to expose the truth. You gave Judge Eckert every chance to do the right thing, and when he didn't, you held him accountable." A long breath. "I've been inside this system so long I forgot that kind of integrity existed. You reminded me." "Who are you?" "After tomorrow night you'll know. Everyone will know." The line went dead. Saturday passed in tense silence. Ava Sophia stayed close to Silas's apartment, playing board games with Maya, cooking dinner, pretending everything was normal, while her mind raced through possibilities. At 8 p.m., her phone buzzed. Text from the anonymous source. Meeting started. Recording in progress. At 9:15, getting good material. Financial discussions. Case manipulation. Witness intimidation. At 10:30, something's wrong. They know. Then nothing. Ava Sophia called back. No answer. Texted. No response. Called again and again as the minutes stretched into hours. At 1 a.m., her phone finally rang. Different number. Familiar voice. "Miss Ashford." Preston Harmon sounded almost cheerful. "It seems we've had a situation." "What did you do?" "I discovered a rat in my organization. Someone who's been passing information to federal authorities for years. Someone who thought they could betray me without consequences. Who? Come to my estate tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. I'll introduce you. Why would I? Because if you don't, the recording device they were carrying, along with all the evidence they've gathered over the years, will be destroyed, and your brother's custody hearing will proceed as scheduled, before Judge Morrison, with predictable results. Ava Sophia gripped the phone so hard her knuckles went white. This is kidnapping, false imprisonment. You're adding federal charges to... I'm inviting you to my home for a conversation, nothing more. Come alone. No FBI escorts, no federal backup. Just you and me, discussing the future of Beaumont County. And if I refuse? Then I suppose we'll see what happens in court next week. He paused. Oh, and Ms. Ashford, our mutual friend sends their regards. They're quite comfortable for now. How long that comfort lasts depends entirely on you. The trap is set. But Ava Sophia didn't become senior legal counsel to the president by backing down from powerful men with threats. Subscribe now to see her walk into the lion's den and come out victorious. The Harmon Associates sat on 200 acres of manicured grounds north of town, a colonial mansion that had survived the Civil War, expanded through the Jim Crow era, and accumulated power like sediment through generations of family rule. Ava Sophia drove through the wrought iron gates at exactly 10 a.m., alone, as instructed, but not unprepared. A servant met her at the door, led her through halls lined with oil paintings and antique furniture, and deposited her in a sunlit study where Preston Harmon waited behind a massive oak desk. Ms. Ashford, thank you for coming. Where are they? Straight to business. I appreciate that. He rose, gestured to a chair. Please, sit. She remained standing. Where are they? Harmon smiled. Nearby, and safe, as I promised. But first, I think we should discuss terms. Terms? You have evidence that could destroy me. I have leverage that could destroy your brother. It seems we're at an impasse. This isn't a negotiation. This is a federal investigation. You've already committed enough crimes to spend the rest of your life in prison. Perhaps, but prison is a long way off, isn't it? Appeals, delays, continuances. The legal system moves slowly, Ms. Ashford. You of all people know that. He walked to a sideboard, poured 2 glasses of whiskey, offered one to her. In the meantime, your brother's hearing happens next week. Morrison is angry, humiliated, looking for someone to blame. And there sits Silas Ashford, perfect target for all that frustration. Morrison will recuse himself when the evidence becomes public. If it becomes public, evidence has a way of disappearing in Beaumont County. You've seen our filing system. She said nothing. Here's what I propose, Harmon continued. You drop the federal investigation, return to Washington, file a report saying Eckert was an isolated case, now resolved. In exchange, I ensure your brother gets a fair hearing, truly fair, not the kind of fair we've been providing. Morrison rules in Silas's favor. Maya stays with her father. Everyone wins. Except the hundreds of families you've cheated over the years, except Denise Carter, except Marcus Trent. Marcus Trent had an accident. Did he? Their eyes met. Neither blinked. Walk away, Ms. Ashford. You've already won more than anyone else who's ever challenged us. Take the victory. Protect your family. Let the rest go. Ava Sophia set down the untouched whiskey glass. I want to see them. Of course. Harmon pressed a button on his desk. Bring our guest. A door opened. 2 security guards entered, flanking a figure with a black hood over their head. They pushed the person into a chair, pulled off the hood. Ava Sophia's breath caught. Hello, Ms. Ashford. Hazel Trask looked up at her, face pale but composed. The court reporter who had spent 12 years documenting judicial bias. The woman who had stood up in court and exposed Eckert's pattern of discrimination. The anonymous source. Surprised? Harmon asked. Hazel has been feeding information to federal investigators for 3 years, right under my nose. I must admit, I underestimated her. Let her go. I will, after we reach an agreement. There is no agreement. Ava Sophia's voice was cold. You've committed kidnapping, false imprisonment, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. Every minute you hold her adds charges. Charges require evidence. Evidence requires witnesses. And witnesses— He let the implication hang. If anything happens to her, I will personally ensure you spend the rest of your life in a federal supermax facility. Threats, Ms. Ashford? From someone in your position? He laughed. You're alone. No backup. No witnesses. Your word against mine in my own home. My word? Now it was her turn to smile. Mr. Harmon, I've spent the last 4 years working in the White House. Do you really think I walked in here without insurance? His smile faltered. She pulled out her phone, turned it to show him the screen. A live video feed, crystal clear, currently showing this very room from a high angle. Broadcasting directly to a secure federal server. How? Your security suite missed the satellite uplink in my car. Military-grade encryption, the kind that doesn't show up on civilian detection equipment. She tapped the screen. This feed has been live since I drove through your gates, currently being monitored by the FBI Atlanta Field Office, the DOJ Civil Rights Division, and, just to be thorough, the White House Situation Room. Harmon's face drained of color. Everything you've said in the last 10 minutes has been recorded and transmitted to federal authorities. The kidnapping, the threats, the offer to manipulate Morrison's ruling, all of it. On cue, her phone rang. Speaker, please, said the voice on the other end. She complied. Mr. Harmon. The president's voice filled the room. I believe we spoke briefly during my last campaign stop in Georgia. You donated quite generously, as I recall. Harmon couldn't speak. I want you to understand something. When you threatened a member of my staff, when you kidnapped a federal witness, you made this personal, and I take personal very seriously. The sound of papers shuffling. FBI agents are currently entering your property through the service entrance. You have approximately 90 seconds before they reach your study. I suggest you use that time to release Ms. Trask and prepare yourself for arrest. The line went dead. Harmon stood frozen behind his desk. The security guards looked at each other, then at their employer, then at the woman who had just destroyed his empire with a phone call. I would advise your men to step away from Ms. Trask, Ava Sophia said calmly. Interfering with federal agents is a felony. They stepped back. Hazel Trask rose from the chair, walked to stand beside Ava Sophia. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. For 3 years of documentation. For having the courage to come forward. For everything. The study doors burst open. FBI agents poured in, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Preston Harmon raised his hand slowly, face slack with shock. You can't. This is my home. I have rights. You have the right to remain silent. Agent Reyes stepped forward, handcuffs ready. I suggest you exercise it. As they led him away, Ava Sophia turned to Hazel. The recording device you were carrying. The evidence you gathered. Where is it? Hazel reached into her pocket, pulled out a small USB drive. They never found it. Sewn into my clothing. Old trick I learned from spy novels. She handed it over. 3 years of recordings. Financial discussions, case manipulation, witness intimidation, everything you need to bring down the entire network. Ava Sophia looked at the drive, small enough to fit in her palm, powerful enough to destroy an empire. Let's finish this. The next 72 hours were chaos. Federal agents executed warrants across Beaumont County, homes, offices, bank accounts. Judge Morrison was arrested at his vacation home in Hilton Head, still wearing golf clothes. Hugo Cray surrendered at his office, face gray with defeat. Deputy Sutter tried to flee and was caught at the county line. Fern Colby broke down crying and offered to cooperate within 15 minutes of being read her rights. Celeste Harmon retained a team of high-priced defense attorneys and released a statement expressing shock and dismay at her father's alleged activities. No charges were filed against her, yet, But the investigation was ongoing. The recordings from Hazel Trask's USB drive proved devastating. Hours of conversations where Harmon and his associates discussed which judges had been paid and how much, how to suppress complaints against cooperative officials, strategies for destroying opponents through anonymous tips, plans to ensure favorable outcomes in specific cases, including, most damningly, a recorded conversation from 2 weeks earlier where Harmon instructed Morrison to make sure the Ashford case goes the right way, no matter what that woman from Washington tries. The evidence was overwhelming, incontrovertible, complete. Tuesday morning, Ava Sophia received a call from the Attorney General herself. The President has authorized emergency federal oversight of the Beaumont County judicial system. Effective immediately, all pending cases will be transferred to federal jurisdiction for review. That includes your brother's custody matter. Thank you, Madam Attorney General. Thank yourself, Ms. Ashford. You did the work. We just provided backup. What happens to the defendants? Preliminary indictments are being prepared. We expect formal charges within the month. Preston Harmon is facing RICO violations, conspiracy, kidnapping, obstruction of justice. He'll be lucky to see the outside of a prison in his lifetime. Morrison, Cray, and the others will face lesser charges, but still significant. And Denise Carter? Her case is being expedited for review. Based on the evidence showing the tip against her originated from Harmon's office, we expect her disbarment to be reversed within 60 days. Ava Sophia closed her eyes for a moment. That's good. That's really good. One more thing. The President wants to see you when you return to Washington. Something about commending exceptional service to justice. I believe there may be a ceremony involved. That's not necessary. Take the win, Ashford. You've earned it. The custody hearing was rescheduled for the following week, transferred to the federal courthouse in Atlanta. A judge with no connection to Beaumont County, no history with the Harmon family, no reason to rule on anything except the facts. Ava Sophia sat in the gallery, watching Silas present his case properly this time. All the evidence she had been denied in Eckert's courtroom, Maya's school records, the psychological evaluation, testimony from teachers and neighbors, laid out clearly and completely. Nicole Ashford's attorney, a new lawyer hired after Celeste Harmon withdrew, made half-hearted arguments about maternal rights and second chances. But without the machine backing her up, without the tilted scales of Beaumont justice, the case was lopsided from the start. The judge, a black woman named Patricia Coleman, 30 years on the federal bench, listened to everything with careful attention. Mr. Ashford, she said when testimony concluded, I have reviewed the evidence thoroughly. I see a father who has provided consistent, loving care for his daughter for 3 years. I see a child who is thriving in his custody. And I see a mother who, whatever her reasons, was absent during the most formative years of her child's life. She folded her hands. Primary custody is awarded to Silas Ashford. Nicole Ashford will be granted supervised visitation, with the possibility of expanded rights pending completion of a parenting evaluation and demonstration of sustained commitment. Maya, sitting in the front row, let out a small cry of joy. Daddy, we won! Silas lifted her into his arms, tears streaming down his face. We won, baby. We're going home. Ava Sophia watched from the gallery, heart full. This was what justice looked like. Not the corrupt parody in Eckert's courtroom, not the bought and paid-for rulings of Morrison's bench. Real justice, based on evidence and law and the best interests of a child. It shouldn't have taken the President of the United States to make it happen, but sometimes that's what it took. That evening, they celebrated at Silas's apartment. Pizza and ice cream for Maya, champagne for the adults. Hazel Trask joined them. She had resigned from her position as court reporter, but had already been offered a job with the DOJ Civil Rights Division, helping to process the mountain of evidence her years of documentation had produced. To justice, Silas said, raising his glass. To courage, Ava Sophia added, looking at Hazel. It takes more bravery to document injustice from inside the system than to fight it from outside. To Maya, Hazel said simply. May she grow up in a world where this kind of fight isn't necessary. They clinked glasses. Later, after Maya had been put to bed and Hazel had gone home, Silas and Ava Sophia sat on the balcony watching the stars. What happens now? Silas asked. Trials, hearings, appeals. The legal process will take years. But the machine is broken. They can't put it back together. And you? Back to Washington? Tomorrow. She smiled. Someone has to keep the president out of trouble. Ava. He hesitated. Thank you. I know I said it before, but thank you. You risked everything. Your career, your safety, your life. For me, for Maya. You're my brother. She took his hand. There was never a choice. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. The email, Silas said eventually. The one that started all this. The anonymous document with the redacted financial records. Was that from Hazel? Part of her network. She had sources throughout the county feeding her information. One of them sent that initial document to get my attention. Who was it? Ava Sophia considered the question. That's still classified. Some of her sources are still in place, gathering evidence on corruption in neighboring counties. The network she built didn't end with Preston Harmon. So there's more? More corruption? More people like Eckert and Morrison? There's always more, Silas. The system protects its own. But now there are people watching, people documenting, people brave enough to risk everything for the truth. She stood, stretched, looked out over the sleeping town. And when they're ready, when they have enough evidence, when the moment is right, someone will be there to catch the call. Someone with enough power to make a difference. Someone like you. She smiled. Someone like me. 2 weeks later, Ava Sophia stood in the Oval Office, receiving a Presidential Medal of Freedom for extraordinary courage in exposing systematic corruption and defending the civil rights of American citizens. The ceremony was small, just the president, his senior staff, and a few selected journalists. The story had made national news, of course. Senior White House counsel exposes county-wide judicial conspiracy. The details were still emerging as the trial dates approached. You know, the president said after the medal had been pinned to her lapel, most people in your position would have walked away after Eckert, filed the report, taken the win, moved on. Most people, Mr. President, haven't spent their career watching systems fail the people they're supposed to protect. Is that why you became a lawyer? To fix broken systems? She thought about the question. About her mother, who had worked 2 jobs to put her through law school. About her father, who had died in police custody after a routine traffic stop went wrong. About all the families like hers, trapped in systems that valued compliance over justice. I became a lawyer because I wanted power, she said finally. Not power over people, power to protect them, power to hold accountable those who abuse their authority, power to make sure that when someone threatens to teach a woman her place in a courtroom, there are consequences. The president nodded slowly. That's why I hired you. And that's why, when you're ready, I'd like to discuss a promotion. Sir? The Attorney General is retiring next year. I need someone to replace her who understands what justice really means. Someone who's willing to fight for it, no matter the cost. Ava Sophia felt the weight of the medal on her chest. Felt the weight of everything it represented. The battles fought, the lives changed, the system finally, partially held accountable. I'll think about it, Mr. President. Take your time, he smiled. But not too much time. There's a lot of work to do. Back in Beaumont County, changes were already visible. The courthouse on Main Street had a new name painted over the entrance. The Harmon family name had been quietly removed. A federal monitor oversaw all judicial appointments until local elections could be held. Hugo Cray's office had been dismantled, its functions transferred to a new oversight board with civilian representation. Denise Carter had her law license reinstated in a ceremony that made the local news. She was opening a new practice focused on civil rights and police accountability, funded in part by settlements from the Harmon family trust. Hazel Trask was traveling between counties, training court reporters in documentation techniques, how to preserve evidence of bias, how to protect themselves while exposing corruption, how to build the kind of records that could bring down empires. And in a small apartment across town, Silas Ashford made breakfast for his daughter, helped her with homework, read stories before bed. Normal life, simple moments, the kind of stability that every child deserved and too few received. Maya would grow up knowing that her aunt had fought for her, that sometimes justice required extraordinary courage, that the system could be changed, slowly, painfully, one battle at a time. And somewhere in Washington, Ava Sophia Ashford sat at her desk in the White House, reviewing files from the latest whistleblower tip. Another county, another pattern, another system protecting its own. She picked up the phone. "This is Counselor Ashford. I need to see the president." The fight continued. The end. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear that fighting back against injustice is possible. Subscribe for more stories of courage, accountability, and justice served. Epilogue. 3 months later. The email arrived at 3 a.m., encrypted, anonymous, bearing only a subject line. "Thought you should see this." Attached, a document from a county 300 miles north of Beaumont. Financial records, judicial appointments, a pattern that looked hauntingly familiar. Ava Sophia read through it twice, then called a number from memory. "We need to talk." "I know." Hazel Trask's voice was tired but determined. "I've been tracking this one for 6 months. They're smarter than Harmon, better at covering their tracks." "But not smart enough?" "No one is, eventually. Not if we keep watching, keep documenting, keep building the case." "Send me everything you have." "Already on its way." Ava Sophia set down the phone and opened her laptop. The document spread across her screen. Another county, another conspiracy, another generation of families who deserved better than the justice they were getting. She started reading. The fight was never over. The system always found new ways to protect its own, new methods to silence dissent, new techniques for making troublesome people disappear. But now the system had something it had never faced before. People inside who refused to look away, who documented everything, who waited patiently for the right moment to strike. And when that moment came, when the evidence was complete, the case was built, the target was vulnerable, there would be someone ready to make the call, someone with power, someone with courage, someone who understood that justice wasn't given. It was taken, one fight at a time. Ava Sophia smiled, opened a new folder, and began to work. All rise. The courtroom in Atlanta's federal building fell silent. 300 seats packed with journalists, lawyers, family members of victims, and citizens who had driven from across the state to witness this moment. Ava Sophia Ashford sat in the front row, wearing the same charcoal blazer she had worn in Beaumont 6 months ago. Beside her, Silas held Maya's hand. Behind them, Denise Carter sat with a group of other attorneys whose careers had been destroyed by the Harmon machine, now rebuilt, restored, ready to practice law again. And in the defendant's box, Preston Harmon stood in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed in front of him, face gaunt from months of pretrial detention. The judge, a 70-year-old black man named Theodore Washington, 35 years on the federal bench, settled into his seat and surveyed the courtroom. "Be seated." Chairs scraped, papers rustled. Then silence. "We are here for sentencing in the matter of United States versus Harmon et al. The defendants have been found guilty on all counts following a 3-week trial." Judge Washington adjusted his glasses. "Before I pronounce sentence, I want to address the defendants directly." He turned toward the defense table, where Preston Harmon sat beside his attorney, a high-priced lawyer from Atlanta who had done his best with an unwinnable case. "Mr. Harmon, you built an empire on the corruption of justice. For 7 years, you bought judges, intimidated witnesses, destroyed careers, and treated the legal system of Beaumont County as your personal property. Harmon stared straight ahead, jaw tight. Families came to that courthouse seeking fairness, parents fighting for their children, citizens seeking protection from abuse. They trusted that the system would treat them equally under the law. The judge's voice hardened. You betrayed that trust, systematically, deliberately, without remorse. He picked up a document. The pre-sentencing report details the scope of your crimes, 147 cases where outcomes were influenced by bribes or intimidation, 34 careers destroyed through false accusations, 1 journalist whose death remains under investigation. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Marcus Trent's family sat 3 rows back, their faces carved from stone. The damage you caused cannot be fully calculated, but I will do my best to ensure it is answered for. Judge Washington set down the document. Preston Harmon, on the charges of racketeering, conspiracy, bribery of public officials, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and kidnapping, I sentence you to 45 years in federal prison without possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted. Journalists scrambled for their phones. Harmon's attorney leaned in, whispering urgently. But Harmon himself showed no reaction, just that same fixed stare, as if he still couldn't believe this was happening to him. Additionally, Judge Washington continued, voice cutting through the noise, I am ordering the forfeiture of all assets obtained through criminal activity, totaling approximately $18 million. These funds will be placed in a restitution trust for victims of Beaumont County judicial corruption. 18 million. The number hung in the air. Mr. Harmon, you are 71 years old. In all likelihood, you will die in prison. I want you to spend those remaining years thinking about the lives you destroyed, the families you tore apart, the justice you perverted for profit. He turned to the other defendants, Morrison, Cray, Sutter, Colby, and 3 others who had been swept up in the conspiracy. Judge Raymond Morrison, 20 years, Hugo Cray, 15 years, Deputy Roland Sutter, 10 years, Clerk Fern Colby, who cooperated with investigators, 3 years with credit for time served. Each sentence landed like a hammer blow. Each defendant reacted differently, Morrison collapsing into his chair, Cray staring at his hands, Sutter clenching his jaw, Colby weeping quietly. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered. News cameras lined the steps, reporters shouted questions, protesters held signs reading, Justice delayed is justice denied, and Beaumont remembered. Ava Sophia walked through the chaos, flanked by Silas and Maya. Denise Carter followed close behind, along with Hazel Trask, who had testified as the prosecution's key witness. A reporter thrust a microphone in Ava Sophia's face. Ms. Ashford, how do you feel about the verdict? She paused on the steps, looking out over the crowd. Justice was served today. Not perfectly. Nothing can undo the harm that was done. But the people who corrupted the system have been held accountable. That matters. Will you be returning to the White House? I never left. I've been working remotely while the trial proceeded. There are rumors you're being considered for Attorney General. Can you comment? She smiled slightly. I can comment that I have a job I love and work that matters. Beyond that, no comment. Another reporter pushed forward. Ms. Ashford, your actions in Beaumont have inspired similar investigations in 3 other counties. Do you have any message for whistleblowers who might be considering coming forward? She thought for a moment. Document everything. Trust carefully. And know that you're not alone. There are people in positions of power who will fight for you, who will use their authority to protect truth-tellers instead of silencing them. She looked at Hazel, standing quietly beside her. It takes extraordinary courage to expose corruption from inside the system. Hazel Trask spent 3 years gathering evidence, risking her career, her safety, her life. Without her, none of this would have been possible. Hazel ducked her head, uncomfortable with the attention. The real heroes are the people who kept records when no one was watching, who refused to look away, who believed that someday someone would listen. That evening, They gathered at a restaurant in downtown Atlanta, the core group who had brought down the Harmon Empire. Ava Sophia, Silas, Hazel, Denise, and a few others who had played crucial roles in the investigation. Maya had been left with a babysitter, allowing the adults to speak freely. 45 years. Denise raised her glass. That man will die in prison. Not long enough, Silas said quietly, for what he did to all those families. No sentence is ever long enough for that kind of harm. Ava Sophia swirled her wine. But the system worked, eventually. Imperfectly, but it worked. Because you made it work. Hazel leaned forward. Without you walking into that courtroom, without the president's intervention, without federal resources, we'd still be gathering evidence in the shadows, waiting for a moment that might never come. The moment came because you created it. 3 years of documentation, 3 years of risk. You built the foundation. We built it together. Hazel smiled. Different skills, same goal. Denise set down her glass. What happens now? To Beaumont, I mean. The federal monitor can't stay forever. Elections next month, Ava Sophia said. New judges, new administrators, new sheriff. The DOJ is providing oversight for the transition, making sure the old network can't reconstitute itself. Will it work? Honestly, I don't know. Systems have a way of protecting themselves. New faces, same patterns. It takes constant vigilance, constant pressure, constant willingness to expose corruption when it appears. That sounds exhausting. It is. She smiled tiredly. But what's the alternative? Let them win? Let families like Silas's lose their children because some judge decided they didn't deserve justice? No one had an answer. The work never ends, Ava Sophia continued. But it does get easier. Every corrupt official exposed makes the next one think twice. Every whistleblower protected encourages others to come forward. Every victory, however small, chips away at the wall of impunity. She raised her glass. To Beaumont, to the families who finally got justice, and to everyone who's still fighting, in courtrooms and records offices and anonymous email accounts, for a system that actually works. They drank. The ripple effects spread further than anyone expected. If you want to see how this story continues to change lives, keep reading, because the best part is still coming. 3 weeks after the sentencing, Ava Sophia received a letter. Not an email, not a text. An actual letter, handwritten on cream-colored stationery, delivered to her office at the White House. Dear Ms. Ashford, you don't know me, but I know you. My name is Carla Trent. Marcus Trent was my husband. For 6 years, I've lived with the official story, that Marcus died in a single-vehicle accident on a rural road, that it was just bad luck, that no one was responsible. I knew it was a lie, but I couldn't prove it. Every door I tried was closed. Every official I contacted told me to let it go. Then you came to Beaumont. I watched the trial. I heard the recordings Hazel Trask had gathered. I heard Preston Harmon discussing how to handle journalists who asked too many questions. I heard him laugh about Marcus, my Marcus, as if his death were just a business problem that had been solved. The FBI has reopened the investigation into Marcus's death. They found evidence in Harmon's files, communications with a security consultant, whose name I won't repeat here. They believe they can build a case. I'm writing to say thank you. Not just for exposing the corruption, not just for putting Harmon in prison, but for giving me something I had given up on. Hope. For 6 years, I lived without hope. I raised our daughter without hope. I went through the motions of life without believing that anything would ever change, that anyone would ever care about what happened to Marcus. You changed that. You showed me that powerful people can be held accountable, that the truth can come out, even when it's buried under money and connections and decades of silence. I don't know what happens next. Maybe the FBI will find enough to charge someone for Marcus's death. Maybe they won't. But either way, I know now that his work mattered. His death wasn't meaningless. The story he was trying to tell, the corruption he was trying to expose, It finally got told. Because of you. Thank you, Ms. Ashford. From the bottom of my heart. Carla Trent. Ava. Sophia read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in her desk drawer, alongside other letters she had received in the past 6 months. Letters from families whose custody cases had been reviewed and reversed. Letters from attorneys whose licenses had been reinstated. Letters from citizens who had lost faith in the justice system and were slowly, tentatively, beginning to believe again. Each one a reminder of why this work mattered. Each one a weight and a gift. The next morning she was summoned to the Oval Office. The president sat behind the resolute desk, reviewing documents. He looked up as she entered. Ashford, close the door. She did. I've made my decision about the AG position. Yes, sir? The Senate confirmation hearings would be brutal. Your work in Beaumont made you a hero to some, but it made you enemies too. There are senators who owe favors to people like Preston Harmon. They'd turn your confirmation into a circus. She nodded slowly. I understand, Mr. President. I don't think you do. He smiled. I'm not backing down. I'm nominating you anyway. Sir? You're the best person for the job. Full stop. The fact that powerful people are afraid of you only confirms that. He stood, walked around the desk. This country needs an attorney general who understands that justice isn't just for the wealthy and connected, who's willing to fight for ordinary people against systems designed to crush them. The confirmation battle will be ugly, I know, but I've seen you face down a judge who had 30 years of power behind him. I've seen you walk into a kidnapper's home with nothing but a phone and a plan. If you can handle Preston Harmon, you can handle a few hostile senators. He extended his hand. What do you say, counselor? Ready to fight for justice at the highest level? Ava Sophia looked at his hand. Thought about Beaumont. About Maya's face when Silas had lifted her in his arms after winning custody. About Hazel Trask, spending 3 years in the shadows, waiting for someone to listen. About Carla Trent, finally finding hope after 6 years of grief. About all the Beaumonts out there, still waiting for someone to notice. Still waiting for justice. She shook his hand. I'm ready, Mr. President. The confirmation hearings were indeed brutal. For 3 days, Ava Sophia sat before the Senate Judiciary Committee while senators alternately praised her courage and attacked her methods. They questioned her judgment, her temperament, her willingness to work within the system. They implied that she was a radical, a vigilante, a threat to the independence of the judiciary. She answered every question calmly, thoroughly, with the same precision she had brought to Eckert's courtroom. When Senator Whitfield from Georgia accused her of destroying a respected judge's career based on political motivations, she responded, Senator, Judge Eckert was found guilty by a jury of his peers on 17 counts of judicial misconduct and 3 counts of civil rights violations. The evidence included financial records, recorded conversations, and testimony from dozens of victims. If exposing corruption and holding powerful people accountable is political, then yes, I'm guilty of politics. When Senator Marchetti from New York suggested she had overstepped federal authority by investigating a state court, she replied, Senator, when state systems fail to police themselves, when 17 complaints over 18 months are buried without investigation, federal intervention becomes not just appropriate but necessary. The Constitution guarantees equal protection under the law. That guarantee doesn't stop at county lines. The final vote was 54-46. Narrow, but enough. Ava Sophia Ashford became the first black woman to serve as Attorney General of the United States. Her first act in office was to establish the Office of Judicial Integrity, a new division within the DOJ dedicated to investigating corruption in state and local court systems. Modeled on the techniques Hazel Trask had developed over years of secret documentation, the office trained federal agents to identify patterns of bias, track financial irregularities, and protect whistleblowers. Her second act was to personally call Denise Carter and offer her a position leading the new office. You know these systems from the inside, Ava Sophia told her. You know how they break people. You know how to fight back. Denise accepted. 1 year after the Beaumont trial, Ava Sophia returned to the county for a ceremony dedicating the new courthouse. The old building had been renamed, the Harmon family's contributions scrubbed from history, and a new wing had been added, funded by the Restitution Trust. The dedication plaque read, Beaumont County Justice Center, dedicated to the citizens who fought for fairness and to those who had the courage to expose the truth. Maya, now 9 years old, stood with her father in the front row as Ava Sophia cut the ribbon. "Aunt Ava," she called out afterward, running to hug her, "you're famous now." "I'm not famous, sweetheart. I just have an important job." "Dad says you're the most powerful lawyer in the whole country." "Does he now?" She smiled at Silas over Maya's head. "He says you can put bad guys in jail just by looking at them." "That's not exactly how it works. He says you're a superhero but without a cape." Ava Sophia laughed, a genuine, full laugh that surprised even herself. "Your dad gives me too much credit. There are lots of people who fought for what happened here. Hazel, Denise, all the families who came forward. Even you and your dad, you were brave too." "Me?" "You. You sat in that courtroom and watched everything. You didn't cry, even when things got scary. That took courage." Maya considered this seriously. "I was a little scared," she admitted. "Being scared and being brave aren't opposites. Being brave means doing the right thing even when you're scared. Like you did? Like all of us did, together." That night, after the ceremony, Ava Sophia sat alone in her hotel room, reviewing briefings for the next day's meetings in Washington. A pile of case files sat on the desk, reports from the Office of Judicial Integrity, each one representing another county where corruption had taken root. There would always be more Eckerts, more Harmons, more systems designed to crush the powerless while protecting the privileged. The work would never truly be finished. But that was okay. She thought about her father, who had died in police custody when she was 17. About the official story, resisting arrest, accidental injury, unfortunate circumstances. About the years she had spent knowing it was a lie, unable to prove it, unable to make anyone listen. That anger had driven her through law school, through the DOJ, through the White House, to this moment. It would drive her through whatever came next. Not anger for its own sake. Anger transformed into action. Rage channeled into reform. Pain converted into purpose. She picked up the next case file and began to read. Somewhere in America, another family was waiting for justice. And now, finally, someone was listening. The true end. Justice delayed is justice denied, but justice delivered changes everything. Share this story with someone who needs to know that fighting back is possible. And remember, the system only works when we demand that it works. Subscribe for more stories of courage, accountability, and ordinary people who refuse to stay silent.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video today. If you found the content helpful, please remember to like and subscribe so you won't miss our upcoming episodes. If you have any questions or suggestions, feel free to leave a comment below. We are always here to listen.